Everyone loves a tier review. Here's how the Tau units in 9th stack up. This is a different format for me, so please let me know what you think in the comments. I've also annotated up all the units so you can jump to the one you really care about. I've ordered the units in terms of types, and we're going to start with Aun'Shi. Ethereal is great in general, so they're going to perform really highly in this tier ranking. Aun'Shi particularly is for Viola sets, so most of his buffs are for there. And so for Viola core, you can give them Set to Defend or Hold Steady, which is either +1 to hit in melee or Overwatch on 5s. Definitely the Hold Steady Overwatch buff is going to be best. You're only really going to take him if you're going to run Viola. So overall, he's around a C category for me, just because it's really forcing you to build your list in a certain way. Kroot Shaper, only a 25 point HQ, really cheap. However, Tau players aren't really in need of more HQs. Although he buffs Kroots and the reroll hits one is pretty good, he's just not really worth taking up a HQ slot, so I'm going to stick him into D. Now the Fireblade gives reroll hits of 1 for core. Also pulse weapons have exploding 6s. Good with breaches, only 50 points. Perhaps not going to set the world alight. I'm going to put this sort of really middle tier, C. Generic Ethereals, I've already indicated to it, they are fantastic. They're going to go straight into A. Probably an auto pick. Only 65 points to the hover drone and run the best HQs you've got. You can't take one with Farsight Enclaves, but one of its abilities is you can pick a unit and it can shoot and perform actions, so that's really good for getting your secondary points. And the biggest buff that these guys can give is the Invocation of Elements. You basically cast 1, or you give it the Humble Stage, so you can cast 2, and they go off on a 2+. And then you can pick a unit and give it things like 5+ Feel No Pain, -1 to hit when moving, or it'll generate CP for you. Really good. I expect Ethereals in practically every list. Now for Commanders, they were the best unit in 8th, and they're basically going to be the best unit in 9th as well. You can only take 1 per detachment, so to maximise this, you're probably going to be building multi-detachment lists. And if you do take a lot of detachments, why not take the Ethereal with its CP generation to try and recoup some of that? All the commanders give anything that's core reroll 1s to hit, so that's really strong. And there are 3 different flavours, each of them are good, each of them probably worth playing, but let's go through them briefly. So the Crisis Commanders, they buff Crisis units. Allows them to ignore modifiers to hit, which is great, but they can still keep the +1 from Markerlights. Essentially, they're going to be hitting everything on 3s. Also gives a unit fall back and shoot, which is really cool, especially since most players are going to be taking Monk Car for the first few turns, which is the advance and shoot as if they were stood still. Coalstar Commander, really fast, 14-inch move, has a once per game teleport ability. It takes 4 weapons and ignores light cover natively. They can be built with amazing shooting and also buff Crisis. They can give Crisis suits an 18-inch threat range because they can auto advance 8 inches instead of rolling. The Enforcer's really the resilient one, -1 damage, 2+ save, you can give it a 4+ invuln. They can give Obsec to a Crisis unit, which is crazy strong. And consider giving this unit the signature system, the Begal Hunter's Plate, +1 to armor save, and a 5+ Feel No Pain. All that together, and it'll bodyguard your characters as well. So overall, obviously the commanders are jumping straight into A tier. Probably choose Crisis, then Coalstar first, and then third choice is Enforcer, but try and take them all. So we've got Farsight, he's also a commander, so he gets his +1s to hit, loads of other buffs. The Farsight Enclaves aren't quite as key in this edition. He is good in melee, he's got a 4+ invuln, but he does have to be a warlord, and his trait is luckily really good, and he can give reroll wounds to core if they're up close. He's a great commander, but compared to the other commanders, he's kind of not as strong anymore, and I'm going to stick him into B tier. So well worth playing, but just outshone a little bit. Shadowsun fits in the same sort of boat as Farsight, has to be a warlord, although her warlord trait is not quite as good. Main abilities are for the Tau Sept, which does have -1 to hit, 5+ invuln. You can select a unit and give it reroll or hit, as an aura of reroll 1s to hit. In 9th, it's better than Farsight, except struggling from the same thing. There's loads of other HQ options and people you can have as your warlord. Just commanders are just so strong. So she'll go into B. She is stronger than Farsight, so maybe Farsight actually dips into C, but I'll leave him there for now. And next is Aun'Va, the character Tau Sept Ethereal. Really good because you can do 2 casts for the Invocations of Elements. Also -1 to wound, 5+ invuln, 2 bodyguards. There is a strange interaction that if you include him in something that's not a Tau Sept, he can actually break the detachment rules. But really strong, he'll go straight into B. Just because of his points and forcing you to use Tau. And Tau Sept has all the great characters, but maybe isn't the best Tau Sept overall. Now we've got Darkstrider, 60-point buffing character. He has the Pathfinder Markerlight rules, so you can shoot them after moving. He also has an aura for fallback and shoot and a +1 to wound for a unit. Another Tau Sept character, really strong, jumping straight into B. And again, because he's locked to Tau Sept, that's the reason for not having him in A. This one, although it's not very clear, is Longstrike, 160 point Hammerhead character. This is only 15 points more than a standard Hammerhead, but it'll hit on 2s. And with its giant rail rifle, you can also get a reroll. Really good single shot shooting, it'll kill tanks, but the silly interaction with bodyguards has been removed, which is good, so he can't be defended. Just really strong, again going into B. You can't really build a list around him, while the Hammerhead rail rifle is amazing single shot attack. There's a low more damage dealing ability in Tau other than that. Troops now, I'm keeping Breachers and the Strike team together. 80 to 85 points for 10. Both really reasonable. You get some nice strategy options with them, especially with the Devilfishes. You do need troops. I think they're a pretty solid B grade as well. There's nothing wrong with them, nothing particularly amazing. And now for the Kroot troops, however, they're super cheap at 60 points. You get a pre-game move like all the different Kroot units, which is great for screening and board control. The Robsec, the cheap. Most lists should have them. And the extra saving for having these guys means you can probably invest in another upgrade or a different type of unit. And they're going to go straight into A, which is likely to be played in most lists. Stealth suits, they got better in this edition. 3+ armor save, additional 1 when they're in cover, that takes it up to a 1+ armor save. -1 to hit natively, that's including in melee, although you don't want them in melee. You get a forward deploy, and because the unit can take drones, that allows them to hit the magic number of 6 models in the unit, which means they can do certain actions. They're difficult to remove, they're going to be annoying for your enemy, and for a 5-point homing beacon upgrade, you can actually drop a crisis suit down on top of them as well during the game. These guys are going straight into the A tier. Next is the Firesight Marksman. He can't be shot, which is pretty cool. Reasonable damage, just not that amazing in this edition. Sniper drones are hitting on 3+, but he's just competing with too many things now in this codex. And so really he's going to go into D tier. He's just not got a really good place to sit in a list. Ooh, next is the Crisis units. Now these are fantastic. Probably only the second best model after Commanders in this edition. Really amazing units, versatile, great at shooting, resilient, so many combos and tactics. I'll do some more videos specifically about these because they've got so many different options. And also, if you want to check a video out after this, it's the one about the best weapon options for points efficiency. I will mention the cool strat, the Strike and Fade for 1 or 2 CP, depending on the size of the squad. It lets them shoot and then move afterwards again. So once again, these guys are jumping straight into A. You can also briefly cover the bodyguard version of this. Only 5 points more, they lose a weapon, but then they get the bodyguard rule. And if you want characters to stay alive in your list, then you really need bodyguards as well, so definitely worth having some of them as well. The Ghostkeel, my son's favourite unit, and unfortunately it's not core, so it's not getting any rerolls. It does have forward deployment, it's -1 to hit. With its stealth drone, you can't target if you're over 18 inches. It's some decent shooting, but no rerolls. It will rely on the marker lights to get 3+ ballistic skill. It's such a cool unit, but not that reliable, and 160 points, it's actually quite expensive. I think the rule of cool would keep him up high. I would put him into A tier just for the rule of cool, but realistically, he's dropping down to D tier. It's just not very efficient for how much you're spending on him and his damage output. I feel bad about that. Josh is going to shout at me. The Krootox Riders, 25 points a model. Perhaps that's a bit expensive, but they're just not as good as the Kroot Hounds. So on that basis, you would never take them over the Kroot Hounds, so I'm going to stick them into D. We're hitting a bit of a run here for D characters, so we're going on to the drones. Reasonably priced, but there's probably no reason to be taking a bespoke squad of drones because you can take drones with units as well. It's difficult in 9th to think where the drones are actually going to have a purpose. So they go in D as well. And then next, I briefly mentioned them before, the Kroot Hounds, 24 points for only 4 models. They're really cheap, really fast. So they get a pre-game move, they can move 12, they can reroll advances and charges. Great for objectives, super cheap, disposable. And so based on that, most lists should have some of these. And it is amazing how in 9th, so much of the Kroot is going to be played with. Right, we've got the Pirahna. It did gain a rune in this edition. It's fast at movement 16. The shooting it can do isn't adding a lot to a faction that's already so powerful at shooting. Again, it's quite expensive at 60 points, and it does the same sort of job as Kroot Hounds, which are only 24 points for 4 models, and they're going to stay alive longer as well. I think the Pirahna is going to drop into D tier. The Pathfinders, I do like this squad. They're a source of marker lights. They've got a special move and then fire marker lights. They give them a very good threat range. I love the railgun on these guys, and I've got a video that shows just how powerful that is. Bit pricey, can die quite quickly, so you can use the Devilfish to keep them alive a bit longer. But I'm going to put them alongside the Breachers in terms of output and efficiency. They are pretty good, and most lists will probably have one, but not an auto include. So Vespid's now a good squad, good damage, fast, native deep strike, great for secondaries, cheap at 12 points, and a solid unit for the B tier. And the Hammerhead is a slightly worse version than Longstrike because it's hitting on 3s. It's all about that single shot railgun. It'll get a reroll. It's not the thing that's going to cause the biggest amount of damage. It's the single shot that's got the most damage. With only 3+ armor save, people are going to target it. It's very much in people's line of sight. I'm going to stick it in C because it'll do some damage, but you'll probably lose it really quickly. The Ray Gunship. I've got one of these, never used it. It's got D3+1 missiles at strength 9, AP -3, and 2d3 damage, so it's not too bad. You can reroll ones to hit, and against aircraft, it's actually hitting on a 2+, and you can reroll the damage. A cool strat called Frequency Lock for 1 CP gives it out of line of sight shooting and a +1 to wound. Pretty similar to the Hammerhead. It's going to do some damage, it will get targeted. I'm going to stick it in a C alongside the Hammerhead. The Riptide, everyone's previous favourite. Also not core, so you're not getting any rerolls. At 240 points, it is very expensive. So it's starting to feel a bit more like a Ghostkeel. And even with its Nova Reactor, for the points, it's just not as efficient. If you've got really fond memories of 8th or the Rule of Cool, you want to be sticking this up pretty high. But realistically, it's going to be down here with the Ghostkeel, are just costing too many points for what it does. That's a shame. And the Broadsides, in contrast to that, are core, get the rerolls, and are super good. They've got 8 wounds with a 2+ save. They've got SMS, which has been buffed in this edition. Their ray rifles are great also, and they can compete in this codex with any of the best units for damage output. These are definitely a tier A. Flyers now, there's nothing particularly special here. You've got the Sun Shark Bomber. I had to look this picture up because I really didn't know the difference between these two. They're 165 points, not doing a great deal of damage. The Bomber run this does can generate mortal wounds, which is nice. It's -1 to hit, but it can't do anything with objectives. Has a 4+ armor save. It's likely just to go down really quickly. I think this one sits in a D tier as well. You're just not going to find these played. And then Razor Shark Strike Bomber. It's got all the same problems as the Bomber. It's going to get taken down. It's not going to last very long, but it just doesn't do as much damage. It just doesn't have that mortal wound output. So it's going to drop into E. That's our first one in the low category. The Devilfish is a good transport. It's fast, and you can disembark after moving for 1 CP. It has special abilities that relate to whether you choose Monk or Caillou. Now, if you're choosing Monk, as you probably will, then it'll get a pre-game move of 9 inches as well. The weapons are a bit better in 9th. It's got an extra wound. It goes straight into B tier, which is really good. And now for the big boy, the Stormsurge, 330 points with a lot of damage output potential. Can reroll all hits. It's got an amazing 2P strat experimental weaponry, means you can ignore invuns. This strat is only for the Borkan Sept, and in fact that Sept does actually synergize well with this unit because it can give an extra 4 inches to all its range, and it can reduce the incoming strength of weapons by 1. So it can be really hard to hit with a 2+ armor save, 4+ invuln, and even more so in Borkan. So realistically this is going to go into B or C tier. Perhaps I'm going to keep it in B because of this Borkan ability it's got. Now I don't know who this last dude is. I've had a look and I can't find it. Let me know in the comments who do you think it is. So I've not included ForgeWorld in this because none of those had any updates as part of this codex. So whereas they were previously strong, they've actually all taken a big nerf. And this is because none of them are core, none of the weapons have been upgraded, and they just don't have the same abilities. So Hazard Suits, Tiger Sharks, Barracuda, Yavara, Yonara, Taunar, all missing the benefits, and to be honest they all sit down in E tier at the moment, but if they come out with updated data sheets they're going to jump straight back up into the top tiers of the army. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my tier rankings and where you think I've made mistakes. If you want to support the channel then give us a like and consider becoming a member as well because there's lots of perks, but otherwise I'll see you again soon. Bye.